This is the new 2022 RedmiBook Pro, the 15-inch model. And with this model, Xiaomi, they are back on track. It's a real game changer from them, and a laptop that, in my time now testing and using it, it's an absolute keeper for me because of the features, what it offers, the price point, and then the weight and general build as you see. So let me just quickly run you through the specs before I get onto this in detail. So it has a backlit keyboard, very large touchpad. It's a full alloy build, which is very strong. It only weighs 1.8 kilos. We have 100-watt Type-C charging. It does have a Thunderbolt 4 port on it, which is good, and an ultra high-speed 2 SD card reader, which you don't often get. Webcam up the top, the screen 15.6 inches, anti-glare, and the resolution is 3200 by 2000. So it's nice and sharp, it's detailed, plenty of room for your work, and great amount of desktop space there. But what really impresses me, and the game changer here, is the Alder Lake. So it's got the Core i7, this model I have, the highest configuration, with the 12650H. It has 6 performance cores, 4 efficiency cores, 16 threads in total. It's an absolute monster, the quickest yet that I've tested in these kind of laptops, even beating the Ryzen 9 5900HX, for example. But it is paired up with dedicated graphics, the RTX 2050. Now, it's not a powerful GPU, but for 3D work, a bit of light gaming, and video editing, it's very handy to have in a laptop like this. So this model is an import model. It's sold only in the domestic Chinese market. It's not sold internationally, and I bought it from a company called Trading Shenzhen. They included this, which is a power supply cable adapter. We do have this in the box, which is a quick start guide. It's all in Chinese. And then our power supply, which is rated to 130 watts, but I believe the laptop is only charging at 100 watts. Then how much does it weigh? So it is 15.6 inches, so I do expect this to be a little bit heavy considering the kind of power it's got in there. So it's, as they claim, 1.8, rounding it up. So just under 1.8 kilos, very good. But the total travel weight with the Type-C power supply then brings it up to 2.26, which for a 15-inch laptop is actually quite a good weight. The lid here doesn't exhibit really any flex at all. It's quite well made, and it's made out of this alloy there with a matte finish. Now, it will be very easy to scratch. We have some Redmi branding right here, power your creativity. The hinge feels very good, and yes, you can open it up one-handed. So nice keyboard layout. The only thing is this key right here, which is some Xiaomi AI button dedicated to that. Now, once you uninstall that app, this button then doesn't actually do anything. So not too much of a problem. So they've now put these tiny little holes along the top here. So this grill lets out a bit of the heat, and we don't get the heat build up right in the top keyboard as we did with previous models. Power button acts also as a fingerprint reader, which is very accurate. It's fast, and you'd use this with Windows Hello. You don't need a password then. Full-size arrow keys. We have home page, up and down, end, and inserts over here. Print screen button too, which is good. Now, very nice to type on this keyboard. Good amount of space. They're good feedback from the keys, and they have a typical kind of travel to them, which is about 1.5, 1.6 millimeters. They're not too shallow. It is also a backlit keyboard. That's the first level we have. Then the second, it's evenly distributed, and the keycaps do feel very good. Palm rest and all these materials around here also made out of that same alloy, just like the lid. Our touchpad, nice and large. It's not super large like MacBook large, but it does work very well. The material of it feels like it is glass, and it's very accurate. I've had no issues with the cursor jumping around or anything like that. So it's a great keyboard and a great touchpad that they've gone with. This laptop's thickness, measuring about here, the distance is 20 millimeters. So the thickness is not too bad for a 15.6-inch laptop. Thunderbolt 4 port right here. So up to 8K 30, 4K 120 Hz out of this, and power delivery support. So both of the Type-C ports can use power and power it with a power supply, which is great. And then HDMI 2.0. Now, I would have been complaining about this. However, connecting it up to my LG CX that I do have, it's a TV that's 4K 120 Hz. I can happily run 120 Hz through this 4K with no problems. 3.5mm combo headphone jack. It's very loud, clear, static free. Then the left side, we have USB 3.2 Gen 1 and then a Type-C 3.2 Gen 2. So that does support display out. We've got a status LED. It's green once the laptop is fully charged, and it does take approximately an hour and a half to fully charge it at 100 watts. This here is a high-speed Type 2 SD card reader. Really happy that's there, but I could have done with another Type A USB, would have been great. There's only one. Then we have some changes to the underside of the laptop. So they have improved the cooling because this area now is a much larger area than what we had before, which was about half this size with some little thin strips there. And then they have increased the thickness of the rear foot there, lifting it up a bit more to help the airflow. We've got two downwards firing speakers. And I'll give you a sample of them now at 100% volume. They don't sound too bad, but they're not amazing either. They're just okay. Then our internals. Notice that they've gone with a much larger fan now for our 12th gen CPU. And we do have this cooler right here for the RTX 2050 with its 4GB of DDR6 RAM. There is a removable, upgradable wireless card right here. Now it is Intel's AX201 with Bluetooth 5.2. And we do have our SSD right here. So no room for a second SSD, sadly. Xiaomi decided to give us a larger battery instead. Now note that this slot is actually PCIe 4 spec, so you can run PCIe 4 spec SSDs, but they went with a cheaper PCIe 3 one there, which is 512 gigabytes. Our speakers here with the little sound chambers to help improve the bass, and this battery is 72 watt hours, which will last for about 8 hours on the integrated graphics. If you use the RTX 2050, it then brings it down to around 3 hours only. So the internals and the build quality is excellent, very good. And our screen, so this one's 90 Hertz. The resolution is 3020 by 2000. And it is a 15.6 inch sized screen, and it's anti-glare, the coating on it, so I don't see any reflections really coming off it, so it's a very practical, usable screen. Now they claim, the Xiaomi claims that the brightness should actually be 400 nits, but I'm getting about 375 or so nits out of the screen here. That's measuring whites, of course. So it is a 90 Hertz screen, and that means that the refresh rate's over the standard 60, and it's a good combination, I think, of fluidity and battery saving too. So you don't have to run the 90 Hertz, you can set it to 60 Hertz. And looking at our color coverage here with the screen, so 72% P3, Adobe RGB is 72%, NTSC here is 68%, sRGB is 96%. So it's not the highest I have seen when it comes to the color coverage, especially with Adobe RGB, but in the 70s there, I will still rate this as being a good screen. It's a very nice panel, and that sharp resolution does mean that I don't see any pixels, and you've got a lot of room there for editing videos and things like that with all that desktop space. So the model here does ship out with Windows 11 Chinese edition. I've upgraded to Pro. The reason was I wanted to add the English language pack without removing the factory partition and the install you get with Xiaomi. So to point out, there are a couple of bloatware applications. I don't know what half of them actually do. There's a few here. This one's some sort of Xiaomi AI thing. Okay, I'm not going to worry about it. I will end up uninstalling those. So it's about 2 or 3 bloatware applications. Now this laptop does have its own power modes as well. So function K key, you can cycle through silent. So that lowers the performance, but you don't really hear the fans as much. Balanced, you still hear the fans. And then turbo, maximum performance, maximum power limit there and use, and you do hear the fan a little bit more, but it boosts up the performance. And I have been using it on that turbo mode, okay? So the performance out of that chipset, I'll get onto shortly, but just to point out that the new Core i7s, the 1265H here that I've got, I am truly impressed. This is a massive step up for Intel. So we have a total of 10 cores now. 6 of them are the performance cores with this model, and then 4 efficient cores. And that gives us a total of 16 threads. The maximum turbo is 4.7, and you'll see there the power limits are quite high with this. Now the memory, I can happily report here that Xiaomi didn't cheap out on the memory this time around, that it is the full spec. We get this. Cell LP, which is our low power DDR5, 5200 megahertz, really quick, and you'll see later on that it's aiding in the performance. This laptop is incredibly fast and snappy and quick. Everything I do, very good, no lag I've seen anywhere. So we've got 16 gigabytes here. Unfortunately, no 32 gigabyte option, and it is in dual channel, so we're getting all the proper speeds there, and great that they have done this, of course. So when you look at our benchmarks, I'll just show you here, Cinebench R23, impressive performance. Look at that single core score, almost 1800 points. Wow. I've not seen that in a laptop ever. And then the multi-core score, that is again, really impressive. It's bettering these 5000 series of the mobile APU chips from AMD, so the Ryzen 5900HX, speeding there. I don't know about the new 6000 series. I have not reviewed those yet. I'm keen to see how they're going to perform, but I am truly impressed by this performance here from Intel. And the benchmarks, continuing on with them. So Geekbench 5 score, again, look at that single core score, super impressive. And the multi-core score, there, is really good. That's top scores. So gaming performance, out of that RTX 2050, I'll get onto a few gaming examples soon, but for the synthetic benchmarks here with 3D Mark, Firestrike shows me that the performance is well over twice that of the best integrated graphics. So I'm talking about Iris Xe and Vega 8 or Vega 10, okay? It is going to be better than that, quite a bit better, double. So it's good that we do have it. And the GPU being dedicated with its own 4 gigabytes of RAM is a bit of a limitation, but it's going to help out with 3D work, gaming, and video editing. Firestrike score, really good again, and Time Spy. So those are the benchmarks, but I've left out the storage. So this is where Xiaomi, I think they kind of cheaped out a little bit, maybe to keep the cost down. They installed a PCIe 3 spec drive, even though it does support PCIe 4. Now, if you've got a PCIe 4 drive, you'll get over twice the sequential reads and writes. So the drive is very quick, don't get me wrong, but it could have been faster if they'd gone with PCIe 4 spec. Just a little bit more information on the RTX 2050. It's my first time testing out this particular GPU. So CUDA cores, it has a 2048. It does support all their latest tech there, including dynamic boost and a power limit of 60 watts. You can see the graphics core boost clock there and our memory rates. And the other interesting one there is that the RAM, so it is DDR6 spec, not DDR5. And you'll see that, yes, that's the limiting factor there. Only 4 gigabytes worth of it. I am on the latest drivers, and yes, it is connected up via PCI Express ×4 Gen 4. Now, that graphics is switchable, so it goes in between the integrated Intel and then the dedicated RTX 2050. So, demanding video file, this one is a 4K HEVC, 140 megabits per second. It initially does a bit of a lag, and then it stabilizes and it plays it just fine. So it is, I believe, right now the Intel integrated graphics handling this, but you can force it through the settings just to always be on that RTX 2050 if you wanted to. So video files, demanding ones, perfectly fine on this hardware. 4K 60 streaming with YouTube here. So I have a very poor internet connection. So you see 209 drop frames, but that was because I had bad buffer health. It ran out of the buffer and started dropping frames. So when you've got a good connection or a good buffer, you can see it doesn't drop any frames at all running 4K 60. And one of the perfect uses of a laptop with this dedicated GPU is this. So Adobe Premiere Pro, the latest version, editing 4K videos, I do find it to be very quick. This performance, aided by the Alder Lake chipset that it does have, but it's the GPU with the CUDA cores, the Mercury playback engine makes this very quick indeed, and just so much better than integrated graphics. You really do need a dedicated GPU. So having the playback resolution here on full, I noticed that it's not dropping any frames. It's handling that quite well. So with basic edits, like this edit that I do have right here, no problems at all. I'm not seeing any lag. So what about the export times? This is going to be very interesting. It's going to be my first test here with this combination to see how fast 1 minute of YouTube preset footage will take to encode. H.264 YouTube preset, 1 minute of footage there. So start on the timer and then export. This should be very quick, I imagine. Wow, it's just absolutely ripping through that. So it looks like it is going to finish up in under 30 seconds. Wow, that's so quick. Alright, so you can say that was probably 20 seconds because it took me about 2 seconds to hit start on the export. That's blazing fast. I am really impressed with this combination, the Alder Lake plus the RTX 2050. And a brief look at our gaming performance. So I'm only going to test out a few games here just to give you a general idea. After all, we do have those 3D Mark benchmarks. So this is Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and I did run it at 90 Hz, and it gets an average frames per second there of 82 from the RTX 2050. That was with the medium graphics preset, so very playable there. As long as you do use around medium settings and you lower the resolution, you don't run the native resolution, of course not, because it won't be able to handle it, you'll be fine here to game. Cyberpunk 2077, this is the latest patch, and we are looking at around 50 frames per second, 1080p on the low setting preset. It does dip down to 35 frames per second. It's normally when you're in the car driving around. You can see now the frame rate's dipping a bit, struggling. I think the problem with the graphics is the RTX 2050 doesn't really have a lot of memory. It's only got 4 gigabytes of DDR6, and that's it. Look at the thermals, they do seem to be pretty good for such a demanding game, and I'll get back out of the car and just show you as we look around. The frame rate's gone up again to in the 50s, and there's still a lot of NPCs around and a lot to render here, so this performance is not too bad. Of course, if you want a better frame rate than this, then lower the resolution down to 720p. Grand Theft Auto 5, this is at 1080p on the maximum settings, and yeah, terrible driving there from me. So the frame rate is looking good. This is well over 100 frames per second, and we've got a 90 Hz refresh rate screen, remember, so that does mean we're able to get well over that and enjoy the higher frame rates. So it's an easy, light title, and it's old. But what happens now if I set it to the native screen resolution, which is 3200 by 2000. There we go, resolution set, and let's take a look at it. Still a very playable frame rate here, around and close to 60 frames per second, looking good. That's in the car, however, so what happens when I get out? Okay, still around 60. Not bad at all, considering it's a demanding resolution, but sadly it's still not able to make 90 frames per second to match that screen refresh rate. Then the webcam's right up here in the top bezel. It's small, 720p, and let's have a look at some sample webcam footage. The quality of this webcam, I don't think is actually that bad. Now, I do have reasonably bright lights on, but I haven't intentionally turned on my bright studio lights. To give you an example of what it'd be like, say, indoors in an office or something. The audio you are listening to is being recorded through the dual array microphones, and they sound excellent to my ears. And it's good to see that we do actually get a webcam this time around, because previous models did not even include a webcam, which I do think is essential to have on a laptop, especially one that's focused as a business laptop. Now then, battery life, it's something that we always want to have more hours of, right? And this model, not too bad. So 72 watt hour battery on the integrated graphics with 30% brightness, I can get over 8 hours, which is good. However, if you swap over to the RTX 2050, it plummets big time. It goes down to then 2.5 to 3 hours maximum. That's taking it pretty easy on it. However, it does charge really quick. It's just under 2 hours because of the 100 watt charging, so it's not bad. So we have Thunderbolt 4. We've got an SD card reader, which is ultra high speed 2-spec. That's good. And the frame of it, very, very good. It's solid. I can hold it on the edge here and it's not going to flex. It doesn't make any creak sounds. Yet it is only 1.8 kilos for a 15.6 inch laptop. That is really good. So the other things I like about it, the keyboard, great to type on. The touchpad's very good. The screen is nice, anti-glare, high resolution, 90 Hertz, perfect. And then for me, the real game changer is that Alder Lake. So that Core i7, the 12650H, my first hands-on with it, absolutely impressive. Single core performance and multi-core performance is a huge step up. Finally, Intel have changed their direction. They've stepped up big time in the performance. So it is outdoing the Ryzen 9 5900HX. Better performance than that. And of course, that's a last gen chip. So we'll see what happens with the 6000 series from AMD, but I am really impressed from this performance. Now the RTX 2050, it is a low-end GPU, but it's great to have a dedicated GPU in a laptop like this. It brings forward a lot more performance when it comes to work with, say, animations, 3D CAD, video editing, and a little bit of light gaming. Certainly a lot better than the integrated graphics it does have with that Intel chip. And what about the bad points then? What don't I like about it? Well, I really wish it had another M.2 SSD slot in this so I could add even more storage, have a secondary drive. Sadly, no room for it, as you saw with the internals. No, just couldn't do it, could they, Xiaomi? Which is a shame. The other is, it's only got one Type A port on there, which is okay, but I would have liked another. That's a very minor complaint from me. And then the fan noise and the thermals. It will hit 100 degrees Celsius, but it's not all gloom and doom, okay? Because it will end up under sustained loads. Once the fan RPMs catch up, hit then about mid-80s. So under heavy workloads for long periods, the fan's going to be loud. So it's a little annoying. It sounds almost like a gaming laptop, but then the thermals are under control. So it just peaks for a few seconds and thermal throttles for a few seconds to those temperatures, which I've seen with other manufacturers. It's because the fan curve on this seems to be quite slow to react to those increases in the just load on the machine there. So that's the really only thing with it. But the keyboard area around the top, it gets nowhere near as hot as I used to see with the other models, like the 2020 model, 2021, which is really good. So they are finally learning, Xiaomi, and for me, this is one of the best laptops that they have produced, and it's a real keeper for me. I'm going to be hanging on to this model, so there may be some follow-up videos. Thank you so much for watching my in-depth review here of the new 2022 RedmiBook Pro 15-inch model.